All right, welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. Question came in last week, which I didn't really deal with, which I don't normally deal with these topics, but I did a little research. I think important to get a proper perspective on it. We'll see how far, where this goes. There was a question last week. Again, it's a question that I've seen a lot of people ask, and I don't know, maybe it's a popular thing people want to know. It's about mysticism and all this, which again I don't normally speak about, but the question that comes up a lot is about Lilith. That there's a big misnomer, and when I mean big because I did a little research here on the fact that people think mistakenly that Lilith was Adam's wife. Right? This is all, again, a lot is going to be according to Kabbalah, but I just want to give a drop of background. Interesting enough, who made this popular way back when? None other than the writer Goethe. Right, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe wrote a book or wrote a play in 1808 called the first part of the tragedy. So he was one of the first writers, I guess, to popularize Lilith. She's portrayed in books, movies, I don't know, television shows, other things, whatever it is. Also, the modern feminist movement, anyone who wants to know, also used her as a powerful female in Jewish folklore, someone to emulate. Someone published an article on her in 1972. It's a writer called Lily Rivlin for a feminist magazine called Ms. Obviously, want to redeem her for contemporary women. And this Jewish feminist magazine called Lilith, founded in the fall of 1976, also took her name. In any case, there's this whole thing, about this, about this so-called person, which we're going to see, not really a person at all, at least according to our sources. Now, the most quoted book in contemporary sources that speaks about Lilith, also pretty much the least reliable, is a medieval book called The Alphabet of Ben Sira. Now, there is a 2nd century before the Common Era book called Ben Sira, The Wisdom of Ben Sira, which we don't hold to its veracity for many different reasons, but this is even worse. This book, because, as we'll see, it, first of all, claims God created Adam and Lilith at the same time from the dust of the earth. She refused to subordinate herself to Adam in their intimate relationship. We'll keep this clean. And she ran away from him using God's ineffable name. Right? Pretty wild. I think a pretty wild idea. Angels tried to force her to return. She fought back, refused. She refused to go to Adam. So the story continues. God made Adam a second wife, Eve. Now, obviously, all this not in the Torah. We're going to see what the Zohar has to say. Right? But and other sources as well. But if you look at the story of creation, there's no mention. We're going to see God created, man, took woman from him, right? The whole question if he's a real hermaphrodite, God split them, she was on one side, she was on the other, and then split them, whatever, the whole discussion. The whole discussion about man, how man was created, right? But there's no mention anywhere, certainly in the Torah, about this. Now, there is textual reference, we will make clear, right? There is textual reference over here. And that is that, what's the textual reference? Isaiah 34, verse 14. What does Isaiah over there say? Lilith is among the beasts of prey in spirits that will lay waste to the land of the day of vengeance. So two interesting things. So it could be she's a spirit, which is most likely the case. Or maybe some sort of, I don't know, beast of prey, whatever. But let's make clear what's second thing. Over there says absolutely zero about Adam. Nothing. Don't mention anything about Adam. Now, what about other sources? So it's mentioned 4 times. Mentioned 4 times in the Babylonian Talmud. None of these times, again, let's make perfectly clear. None of these times she's referred to as Adam's wife. They discuss her in terms of what? That a man shouldn't sleep alone in a house lest Lilith fall upon him and is asleep. That she could influence the outcome of pregnancy in describing how she can appear. Now, that doesn't sound like a person. That sounds like a spirit, like a spiritual force, right? It seems like a bad spiritual force, right? That's what it sounds like. Now, there are many references in the Zohar, and I'm only bringing this out because I just want to show where the misnomer is and what the source is. So people will know, okay, I'm not going to make this same mistake and say, oh, look, she was created before Eve and all this, and she went off and blah, blah, blah. So in the Medrash Anelam section of the Zohar, in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, says in the name of Rav, Adam's created together with his mate. Now, if you look at Genesis chapter 5, verse 2, what does it say? Male and female, he created them. Right? He created male and female. God separated her from him, brought her to him. Now, how do we know that? Also, biblical source. The Zohar says, Zohar, really commentary, deep commentary on the Torah, because it says he took one of his sides, i.e. his ribs, created from his loins. Right? He's from her, she's from him. Right? So I get a biblical source to say, first of all, he created male and female together. And he created, so the whole discussion, how you learn this verse over here? That he took one of her ribs. Well, if they're created together, how do you take one of her ribs? One of his ribs, the creator. Okay, it's a whole discussion. Not really pertinent for now. Comes along in the name of Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua said there was an Eve before this, taken away because she was a harmful spirit. Spirit, not a person. Another was given in her place. Now the question is, what are we talking about? We're talking about somebody physical. We're talking about someone spiritual. Seems very clear. We're talking about someone spiritual. Says Rava, the second one was physical, the first one was not. Right? So the first one over here, not physical, spiritual. Because there are spiritual beings. Spiritual beings have a purpose in the world. Read the book Derech Hashem, the way of God, he goes through different types of spiritual forces. Right? So, and obviously that's according to Kabbalah. So what would a person take out of it? What would a person take out of it? There's spiritual forces in the world and how they work. In general. In general, how things work in the spiritual world. I think that's important to know. Because just like things work certain ways in the spiritual world, they work here in the physical world. Right? So exactly how all that works, good. You should read over there. Read over there in Derech Hashem. He speaks about spiritual force. Now, the Zohar is clear. Let's make no mistake. The Zohar says she preceded Eve. Okay? She's not a person. She's a spirit. And there are harmful spirits. There can be harmful angels that cause destruction. Right? We know that the Torah tells me 3 angels came to visit Abraham. One to heal him, one to tell him that Sarah was going to have a child, and one to overthrow Sodom. So you see, there are spirits, there are spiritual forces that can cause tremendous damage. Demons sort of have character traits of man, have character traits of angels, in different ways. Their forces have been much weakened today, so we don't see them when we come in contact with them. We wouldn't know one even if we did see one, right, in general, but they've been much weakened today. In the time of the Talmud, they had a lot of power, right? The rabbis came in contact with them, and where they hang out, different things Talmud speaks about, but they have certain character traits of angels, certain character traits of humans, but they certainly can be destructive. So that's one thing. So she's considered a spirit, and a harmful spirit that can cause damage. Another passage in the Zohar on Leviticus 19:8 goes further in what her connection to Adam is. Because says in Zohar, there's a female, a spirit of all spirits. Her name is Lilith. She was at first with Adam, but when Adam went out, see, she's before Eve, and he was with her before Eve. Oh, let's see what it says. So the Zohar continues and says, when he was created in that hour, his body became complete. 1,000 spirits is a mind-boggling idea. 1,000 spirits from the left, i.e. evil, clung to the body. In other words, you get all these, you got good spiritual forces. You can have negative spiritual forces. Now, you could ask the question, so why did God create them? Purpose for everything. They're messengers. That's what angels are. They're messengers. And we have to remember one thing before I go further. If you see in the book of Derech Hashem, The Way of God by the Ramchal, and he's going a lot according to Kabbalah, one thing he makes clear, and that's, throughout Jewish philosophy as well, and that is spiritual forces have no free will. Means Mr. S can only do things because God tells him what to do. He's going to take someone's life. God says, fine, you can do it. But we see the beginning of Job, right? He comes out and says different things. God says, fine, test him, can't kill him. God gives him a direct command. Can't go against that direct command. So angels in general, they're messengers. They're 100% messengers. Not only are they messengers, they have to do what God says. And there are different levels. Some angels on higher levels, some not. Whatever that means. But they're messengers. That's what it means. Right? Because when Yaakov sends messengers to Esav, when he hears that Esav has this big army, right? Messengers could mean messengers, people, or it can also mean angels. One of the reasons he might have sent angels is because Esav grew up in Isaac's house, right? They're brothers, obviously. So he knows what spirituality is. They want to try and make an impression on him, sending him angels. One explanation. So what happened over here? There are 1,000 bad, evil spirits clinging to his body. So the Holy One, blessed be He, shouted at them, scared them away. So Adam is lying with a body without a spirit. So that's not human. Remember, God creates man and He breathed in the spirit of life. Without the spirit of life, man dies. So one saw Ramban that, I wanted to interpret saying, well, what happened between that time? Maybe God created man. And when He created man, there was a certain amount of time before He put in the spirit of life. So maybe that could be a proof for quote unquote Cro-Magnon man, these other, other species, lower species, let's say of man. So it brought this up to a number of people. He said, no. First of all, you can talk about evolution, it's totally not true, but why would you even want to give some credibility to something that's false? But okay. Once man was created, the spirit of man went in. Right? But over here, what does the Zohar say? That's normally how we would look at it. But the Zohar says, drew away these spirits, and Adam was lying in a body without a spirit. So God created the mold. And that's what Rashi says when He created man, took from the four corners of the earth, and He minted them like a coin. Right? So all mankind, men, women, come out the same. We're minted. We have certain characteristics, certain things that women give the child, certain things males give the child. And the one thing they both can't give is the spirit. there's no spirit, no child, right? Child's going to die, or any human's going to die. So Adam's there, created, but not in he's in a form, but he has no spirit. He has no life. It will make things even more graphic. His appearance was green. Okay. Now, Adam stands up. And what did we say before? Let's go back. It said male and female, he created them. So Adam was there. Adam was there. And he's a body without a spirit. All the spirits surrounded him. God pushes away all the spirits and he stands up. And his female's attached to his side. Have a sidekick. No pun intended. He's got a sidekick over here, attached to him. That's what the Torah seems to say, right? It says he created both of them. Seemingly one attached to the other. So what do you do with the facts came out of the side? Oh, this would be very good. This would make sense over here. So what happens? The Holy Spirit was in him, spread out to his side, and that side grew and grew, and he became complete. Right? He becomes complete over here, and he seems to cut Adam into two, right? Seems to split them both in half. Adam's one, female's the other. And then it says, God brought her to Adam in her perfection, right? Because the Torah says it's bad for man to be alone. So God takes woman, brings them to Adam, like a bride to the canopy. Now, what happened? So where's Lilith over here, this spirit? All the other spirits fled. What happened to her? She fled. Gonzo. Now, this is based on what? It's based on what the Torah tells me. It says Adam was created as male and female, joined at the hip. No pun intended. Right? The sides. What's the female side known as? Eve. Now, what about Lilith? So what happened to her? What happened to poor Lilith over here? So she was a spirit, not a human. She was not in human form. So she was there before he and Eve were separated. She was around at that time. But once they were separated, subsequently married, she left. So what's clear over here? She's not physical. She's not a physical person. That is the first mistake. That's the first mistake, right, that's made. Because in this source, this Ben Sira, the alphabet of Ben Sira, right, is the meaning, root variations of the biblical account. Satirical portrayal of biblical characters. Right, so again, making basically this whole thing look bad. So that could be pretty bad source where they say, see, she married to him before, and then Eve came. No, she never married to him. He was created together with Eve. She was around, but she wasn't part of him. She wasn't part of either one of them. God split them, completed them. So we see clear over here, she's a negative spirit, not a physical demon. A nasty spirit, let's call it. Now, comes along the great Kabbalist, the Arizal, revives the glory of blessed memory, and he wrote that there's a certain angel who's in charge of all men, demons. We mentioned demons have part characteristic of man, part of angel, etc. They're nasty also. Nasty spirits. So he's in charge of all these demons. They're called mazikim. What does the word mazik mean? Damage. Right? The Talmud is full, different passages where these demons came and caused all kinds of damage. That's what they're good at. They cause damage. We don't see them. We don't fathom them. They're in a much weakened state for different reasons. And that's it. We don't have any contact. We don't see them, nothing. Doesn't mean they don't exist. God has, they're messengers like anyone else. Any other spiritual force. So God wants to, make a tornado destroy Kansas, right? Kick our heels 3 times. We won't be in Kansas anymore, Toto, right? So he makes the tornado. Where's the tornado come from? We'll send an angel to do it. He doesn't do it himself. Send a messenger. We'll take one of these, demons or another angel. This is what they're good at. It's okay, put them in a form of tornado. Let them destroy half of Kansas. For whatever reason. So these demons are called mazikim. They cause damage. That's what they do. Now, what about Lilith over here? So you got this male demon who's quote unquote whose wife. Now how this all works, because demons have certain character traits of men also. One of them is that they procreate. Right? So he can have a wife. He's got this wife of Lilith, so to speak. Okay. She's in charge of all the female demons. She got hierarchy here. She's got power. She got certain power here. Now, comes on the Arizal further, and he says, what is she similar to? What is she associated with? The sword of the angel of death. That's what she's associated with. So he understood, again, this is the greatest of the Kabbalists ever, right? Rav Isaac Luria, known as the Arizal. Right? So what did he do? What is she associated with? The Arizal understood she's a spirit of lust. That's still around and dangerous. So we said before, if a person goes to sleep, you don't want to have her influence on you. Right? Again, as a spirit. Also, the Zohar comes along, identifies her as a female partner of Mr. S. Right? Female partner. Just like he's a messenger, does all kinds of things. Right? So too she does. And the Zohar calls her the ruination of the world. Because what does she do? What's her goal in life? I guess is what she does. Her role is to bring immorality into the minds and actions of humans. That's what she does. So a pretty negative spirit over here. So now, if we look at what the Arizal says, so now what do we have? What do I have? These 2 passages. First passage describes Adam as having a harmful spirit that was removed when he was created. What was that harmful spirit? Of lust. That was removed when he married. He was able to direct his sexuality in a holy and proper manner. How did he do that? Through his wife. Right? So in those terms, we'll keep this clean, keep this PG-13. Sexuality can be used as a tremendous force, but it has to be used in the right way. Right? So it can't be abused. Right? Etc. And even if a person's married, shouldn't be with his wife whenever he wants, whenever she's permissible. So you understand, if it's given as such a strong force, why is it you got to control it? That's the purpose of it. It has to be harnessed in the right way and get abused like anything else. So in the second passage, we look at it the same way. What does she represent? She represents lust, sexual desire in a negative way. And we see, unfortunately, we see in this world tremendous power. Tremendous power she has. And what's going on? Pretty much from the beginning of time. And it's directed in a negative way. Sexuality can be positive, tremendously positive, can be negative. So what did she do? God brings Eve to Adam. They unite. They're married, so to speak. When she sees that, she doesn't have that power anymore, she disappears. So essentially, she's a negative spirit over here that causes people to sin through lust and immorality. Now, What's the $1.5 million question? $1.5 million question is, so what happened to her? What happened to her? So the Zohar further quotes a verse in Isaiah 34, verse 14, and explains that it speaks of her, expounds that when the Messiah comes, she'll finally be expelled forever. Right? In other words, she'll be around till the Messiah comes. Once the Messiah comes, she's gone. She's toast. So, when the Holy One, blessed be He, brings about the destruction of the wicked Rome, turns it into a ruin for all eternity, He's going to send Lilith there. She's going to be banished forever. Let her dwell in that ruin, for she's the ruination of the world. To this refers to the verse, and there shall lie down Lilith, find her place of rest. Yeah, in utter destruction. So Isaiah chapter 34 is talking about future. It's talking about when the Messiah comes. Now, let's go a little bit further, right? Then I'll take any questions if I can answer them. That the Arizal goes a little bit further. We mentioned before, she's the female partner of Mr. S. And we look at her as the ruination of the world, causing problems, immorality, whatever you want. She brings immorality into the minds and actions of humans. So it makes sense. When the Messiah comes, she's gone. Because when the Messiah comes, we're going to reach a perfected state. And Satan, Mr. S, will get destroyed. Right? He knows he's on his last legs right now. Messiah right around the corner. So I remember someone once telling me, said, I said, when Messiah comes, you have, come to Israel. It's like, no, I don't want to come to Israel. It's too cold in the winter. I said, put on another sweater. He said, nah, it's really dreary and it's cold and it's this. I said, but you don't get it. You're going to be doing the will of God. You're not going to care about the weather. The weather's not going to bother you. It's not going to affect you. Right? If we hold like the Rambam, it's not going to be no difference between this world and that when the Messiah comes. Right? But when the Messiah comes, again, why do I mention this? Because the world's going to be in its perfected state. And when it's in its perfected state, we'll all be doing God's will. Mr. S, no purpose in the world, he's gone. Lilith, no purpose in the world, she's destroyed. They're both destroyed. Now, it should be, if we look at it in these terms, that how can somebody want to make Lilith an icon of Jewish feminism? I mean, who's going to choose something as his role model? But I will say, there are a lot of men, here in Israel, what are they called by? Nimrod, of all things. Nimrod, right? What's the root of the name Nimrod? Is Mered. Memresh Dalit. What does Mered mean? Mered means to rebel. Right? They say, he's very strong, and he's the one that took Esau's coat, so to speak, and, whatever. And, first major rebel, so to speak. So now you got men, parents naming the kid Nimrod, want to be strong. Like you're naming him after someone who did all kinds of things against God. That's who you want him to be. A friend of mine, I call up every poor. Yeah, his wife has a cousin named Vashti. Can't make this up. Her cousin's name is Vashti. So Rav Scheinberg, blessed memory, once said, Vashti, why don't they call him the Nebuchadnezzar? Like, what a name. What a name, Vashti, imagine. I don't know if she had a tail or spots, I don't know. But you name somebody like that, you got to be out of your mind. You got to name Nimrod, you got to name, you're going to use as an icon, so to speak, of Jewish feminism. You're going to use her. I mean, look, you see, people idolize all kinds of people, athletes, God forbid, sports figures, put up their posters, who knows what. Most of these people are scum of the earth. Such an icon. Same thing over here. Loved it. Right, but same thing over here. Right, we're going to say, wow, it's so great. Feminists going to say, look, she's scum of the earth over here. She's causing ruination to the world. Not my language. Prophet Isaiah says that. There are those who assume, and I would just get back to this, There are those that assume that the story found in the alphabet of Ben Sira, again, which we said is not a valid source, is based on the concept of the first, quote unquote, first Eve that are found in the Medrash. That the Medrash talks about two Eves, right? And it's the Medrash about the book of Genesis. Now, according to the Medrash in the name of Rabbi Chaim, what does Rabbi Chaim say? The first Eve returned to the dust. It's brought down to the Medrash, Genesis Rabbah 22:7. And it's also in the Zohar 34b. First Eve disappeared, gone. And God created a second Eve for Adam. That's Genesis Rabbah 18:4. Now, the commentaries notes over here that the Midrashim, like many other Midrashim, you don't necessarily take them at face value. There are certain agadatas in the Talmud, right? These esoteric passages, speak about different things, and a lot of times commentaries will say, that's just an exaggeration. They're using a big number to tell you there's a lot of people, but doesn't mean that amount. Right? So many Midrashim, we don't necessarily take literally. You got to say when, where, how. Okay. Right? You have to dissect every Medrash. But a lot of Midrashim, we don't take, they don't have any halachic value. Right? Usually. And we don't really take them at face value. We don't look at them literally, in general. I mean, again, you have to know where, what, and all that. And there can be contradictions, which is okay. It's not like it made it into the Talmud, so I have to answer up necessarily the contradiction. There can be contradictions, but we don't necessarily take them literally. But they could serve as Kabbalistic ideas. In any case, nowhere does the Medrash say Lilith or anything like the story of what the alphabet of Ben Sira says. Now, some will argue that this work is of risque folk tales, or what we're going to see as anti-rabbinic satire. Others say there was some sort of polemic broadside aimed at Karaites or some other distant thing, whatever it was. So we see over here that she's a spirit. They weren't married and all that. And she causes people to sin. And she will be destroyed. Right? She will be destroyed. Just like the evil inclination. Mr. S. Right? And that is the story of Lilith. So again, why do I mention it? Because a lot of people ask the question, they say, how can it be? Based on the Torah itself, where it says God created male and female, don't mention anything about her. So either you have to tell me she came first, or that they were never married. How could they ever be together? Right? So it seems clear according to the Medrash, seems clear according to the Zohar, that she was a spirit. And she continues today to make people's lives a misery by trying to cause them to sin through immorality. That's what she does. But the one source we do have that speaks about her is, we mentioned, right, in her demise, is in Isaiah chapter 34, where it says she's going to dwell in ruin, like the destruction of Rome. She's going to lie down there and find a place of rest. Now, again, if I didn't have the Zohar or the Medrash, what in the world does that mean? Need explanation, right? So she's going to get destroyed as a spirit, just like Mr. S, the Talmud says, that he's going to get destroyed, when the Messiah comes. And that the Messiah is going to destroy him, and that's it. Not going to have any other power. Not going to have any other purpose. So now God's not going to need him anymore. Why? Because once the world gets fixed to where it needs to go, whoever survives is going to be doing God's will. We're all going to be doing God's will. So if we're all going to be doing God's will, Mr. S has no purpose here. There's no evil inclination. He that gets destroyed. And right now, he's fighting for his life. Because as we know, we're very close to when the Messiah is going to come. Right? We're in the Messianic era, as everyone agrees. Question is, when it's going to happen. In any case, that is the story, according to the Medrash, according to the Zohar, of one spirit, Lilith. Someone asks, is there any truth to mentioning Lilith by name causes problems? Someone says, reminds me of saying Bloody Mary in a mirror in the dark. I don't think so. I don't think saying her name causes problems. Even if a person did, doesn't have that kind of power. Some say Rahab, who was the wife of Joshua, she was a prostitute, and they say that she had such beauty, such unbelievable beauty. If someone looked at her, they'd have a seminal emission just by looking at her. Could it be saying the name could conjure up ideas? Maybe. I don't think in this case it has any power. That has any bearing at all. Doesn't Torah say we shouldn't say the name of demons gives them life? I don't know about that, but normally, by demons, what are they called in Hebrew, or according to the Talmud, they're called shadim. Actually, King David also says, about shadim. So we don't normally say shadim, we say shindalit. Why shindalit? Because you don't want to mention them, right? It could give them power, right? So we don't normally mention them. But I don't know if you mention it in English. I don't know. Does it have that kind of power? I don't know. I don't know if it does or not. Maybe if you say it in Hebrew or whatever, there are, again, let's make clear, there are forces. If a person knew what they were doing, you don't have to be on a high spiritual level. If a person knew what they were doing, they could tap into the dark side. Now, God created the dark side, even though the Christians changed that verse in Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7, that God created evil. God created evil. Now, it doesn't mean God is evil. It means he created it. He lets a person tap in. Does he want them to? No. Doesn't want them to. So you want to tap in, it's not so hard. Right? The Ramchal speaks about it. And Derech Hashem, keep mentioning it. Right? He mentions it. So you don't have to be on a high spiritual level. Definitely don't have to be on a high spiritual, but I will say like this, playing with these type of forces, you're playing with life in your own hands. They are powerful forces that can cause utter destruction, even a person is doing fun or whatever. I did give a class. I did once give a class. I did a video on Tanakh Talk about Ouija boards, demons, Ouija boards. So I mentioned a number of stories about playing with a Ouija board. Ouija boards, also, you don't have to be on a high level or anything. Is it possible to bring up spirits? Yeah, it is. The Torah speaks about it. You're not allowed to. Right? There are a lot of things when it comes to doing this you're not allowed to do. So that means it's possible. Which means that you might say, I need to be in a high spiritual level to be able to do it. Not true. God will allow you to tap in. Right? I'll give one example. When Abraham gets together with Keturah after Sarah dies. Who's Keturah? Hagar. Right? She repented, all this. So all spiritual things, who did he give it to? He gave it to Yitzchak. Right? He was the progenitor of the Jewish people. What else? So what did he give to the children he had with Hagar, with Keturah? He gave them matanot, or as we'd say in yeshivas, matanas. What are matanas? Gifts. So Rashi says, what gifts? What gifts did he give? He gave names of impurity, angels of impurity, so to speak. In other words, he gave them names in order to use for, to have control over spiritual forces, different things. Now, there's an obvious question. I never seen really a fully good answer on this. Why in the world would he do that? I can understand because everything's spiritual to Isaac. Okay, so give nothing to them. Why give them spiritual forces? Right now, where did the children of Keturah go? Where did they end up in the east? So we understand that, the Far East. Far East. So you see, there's a lot of, sorcery. That's a good word. A lot of sorcery in that. Where is it? Where's the center of it? Certainly not America. Right? Where is the center of it? It's in the Far East. So the question is, why do you give them that? Why allow them to play with these forces? Cause havoc in the world potential. So my Rebbe should be well brought down that he gave them these names in order to say, you know what? They are never going to have any contact with the Jewish people. I'm going to send them so far to in a spiritual way, so far on another dimension, they're never going to be mixed up with Jews. They're never going to have anything to do with Jews over here. So he said he gave them that just to send them out. Totally send them out. They should have no contact whatsoever, spiritually speaking, with the Jewish people. It should be that far gone. So far for me to disagree, but I have a hard time understanding why we do that. I can understand you give them nothing, or you give them, I don't know, give them a little bit of money and say goodbye. But to give them something so powerful, even to separate themselves from the Jewish people, that they'll never be recognized as the Jewish people, they'll never want to have anything to do with the Jewish people, keep them totally separate. I know, it's a little bit hard. I don't have a better explanation, right? But that's what my Rebbe brings down. That's what he brings down over there. So, spiritual forces are not something to be played with. Not for non-Jews either, right? Even non-Jews not allowed to play with this stuff. It could potentially kill a person. Bringing up souls, I'll just give one example. Bringing up souls in general, a soul does not want to come back to this world. It's tremendously painful for the soul to come back. Question is, why by doing certain incantations or other things, you have that kind of power? It doesn't matter, right? It's got that kind of power, but it's painful for the soul. It's painful for the soul. So there have been instances where people have told the story, just by, Ouija board and this and that, they caused destruction. There was somebody, they were complaining, it caused me pain and this and that. And, they still want to ask you questions and different things. Anyway, one of the persons goes home. This is, what sometimes, what do you call it? People in the army, here in Israel, they don't have anything better to do sometimes at night. So sometimes do this or whatever. And what happened? Guy gets home, and he sees his entire house is ransacked. Told the story. He himself told the story. So I heard the story from him. Then he walks into his house, ransacked. Totally ransacked. Now he looks around, no broken windows, no broken bars, no opening whatsoever for anyone to get in. So you can say, well, maybe someone had a key. Maybe someone had a key and ransacked it. Maybe. Right? But this guy was totally spooked. Because he said, how is it possible someone got in? It's airtight. No windows open, no crack, no nothing. Nothing broken. There was another story of someone that a guy got thrown out of a window himself. The angel sort of threw him out a window. Or whatever, countless stories. You can watch that video on Tanakh Talk. In either case, for Jews and non-Jews, not something to play with. And the Torah tells many times, don't play with swords. Do not do any of these things because they have power. And when you do that, it weakens God's power to a certain extent. But God allows it. God gives you free will. I knew someone's going to bring this up. What about the witch? Right? The King Saul brought up also an issue, questions, how could he have done it? Right? Also true. But whatever. In general, bringing up, spirits is you're playing with your life. Even it's brought down according to the code of Jewish law, using an ineffable name of God, even to save a life. Even to save a life, you're not allowed to. Because that also could take you as well. Again, the Ramchal says, in Derech Hashem, God created them. They have a purpose, right? They're messengers, but it's not something you should tap into. You tell me he created it, okay. He gives people free choice. Listen, he also allowed people to create chocolate and all kinds of things that are fattening, that'll cause a person to have high cholesterol, diabetes, and other things. So who says for you to be a chocoholic? Right? Who says for you to tap in? Okay, within reason. There are certain things within reason. Fine. This, he says, never. Should never tap in. There was a story here in Israel many, many years ago. Someone was healing people miraculously. So someone undercover went in and said he had this, had that, the other thing. And what did the person do? The person went into some sort of contortion, used some sort of name or whatever, and is able to see things that a normal person can't see. What was that? Some spiritual force. Again, it's like playing with fire, in short. In short, but this claim over here, right? The Torah certainly makes no reference to it. But when the Torah says it created together, so how can you say she was there first? Right? So the Zohar answers. The Zohar says that she was a spirit. She wasn't physical. Right? But Isaiah says, yeah, she's going to get destroyed, and look what she does. Look at the damage that she does. Now, there are spiritual forces cause damage. Mr. S causes damage. Tremendous damage. Not to mention that he takes life, but he can only take life when God wants. He doesn't have free will to do what he wants. But what does he do? And he doesn't need me to agree. He's very good at making people sin. That's what he does. And he doesn't stop. He's an angel. Right? You overcome him one place, he comes somewhere else. He doesn't sleep. He's an angel. Right? So a person thinks, I beat him this way, comes back another way, comes back a third way, a fifth way. But says even if you beat him, he's got a lot of patience. All he needs is to put in a little bit. I mentioned my class last week on duties of the heart. All he needs to put in a little bit into you. He's not going to say, go ahead, I want you to desecrate Shabbos. You're not going to do that if you're a Jew. So what does he do? What does he do? He looks for an opening. He looks for some sort of small weakness. When he looks for a weakness and a person's down or whatever, then, he puts the poison in, right? A drop of poison. Now, is that drop of poison going to say he's going to desecrate Shabbos? Nope. Not going to do that. But he's got a lot of patience. So time can go by. Other things happen to a person. So that little drop of a hole that he made, now it expands. And then it expands a little bit more. And then it expands a little bit more. And then other things happen and bam, it's wide open. And then eventually when it's wide open, that's when he does a great job. And that's when he goes up. But it could take years. Take months, take years. Right? Why is that? Because he's got a lot of patience. And he knows someone going on the right path. They're not just going to give it up. They're not just going to stop. They're going to keep going, whatever. It's fine. It's kind of like, I'll give an example. 30 days of the month of El, we prepare for Rosh Hashanah. Got 30 days to be introspective. So the evil inclination can say, you know what, I'll give you 30 days. You want to reach a high spiritual level, you want to sleep less, you want to win a lot of muster, you want to change, I'll give it to you, not a problem. Right? Comes Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, 2 days, making God king, having these festive meals, being in synagogue all day, all this unbelievable spiritual feeling person has and how much they want to work or whatever. Then you get the 10 days of repentance. And the evil inclination says, you know what, I'll even give you the 10 days of repentance. I'll let you be introspective. I'll let you feel like a piece of dirt. I'll let you do all these things. I'll let you reach that high spiritual level. Fine. Sukkahs, you want to bask. You want to bask in a sukkah, clouds of glory, sleeping outside, weather permitting, shaking your lulav. You feel like you're another planet. Unbelievable. So Mr. S says, yeah, I'll let you have that also. It comes the last day of Sukkah, Simchas Torah. Sit there and dance all night, dance all day. You're dancing with the Torah. You feel like you're just in another world. In another world, Mr. S says, great, great. Then comes after Simchas Torah. Then you go back to the real world, right after all the holidays. You go back into the everyday. Then Mr. S says, okay. Now what happened to all your spiritual levels? Now you get back into the nitty gritty. Now you get back to work. Now you get back to, all these other things, things that you've been doing. It's not a festival. It's not Shabbos. It's this. Once you get back to the nitty gritty, to the everyday, then Mr. S says, okay, now you're mine. Because you have to work. So you're working those 30 days. You're working the 10 days of repentance. You're working on all the spirituality. And you're going. And then you go into every day. It's a letdown. It's a letdown in different ways. You have to take those days and bring it into every day. You have to take that spirituality and run with it, because it's not going to last. Not going to last very long. So Mr. S knows that. And when you have an epiphany, you grab it, you run with it. But what happens? Go stale. We end up doing things by rotes. We go down. We make mistakes. And Mr. S says, okay, now you're mine. So you got to put that spirituality into every day. What's the problem? It's hard. Totally hard. Right? He gives us an opportunity. He doesn't, he'll make it hard for us also. But it doesn't matter. You want to reach higher spiritual level. He doesn't care. He doesn't care because he's got a lot of patience. And all he needs is to make a little bit of a hole. And once he makes a little bit of a hole, then he rips it. Because then it's only a matter of time. Now, so what does the person do? The person got caught off guard with something. Saw something they shouldn't have seen. Let's say wasn't necessarily their fault, but the image is still there. Right? So that hole is still there. So then, a person gets depressed, or a person has difficulty, whatever it is. And then Mr. S sort of turns the screw. And then that pops up, and then it gets bigger. Right? And it goes until eventually a person comes to sin. Now, does that mean it's going to happen overnight? No. It doesn't mean that. Right? But when a person's resolve gets weakened, Mr. S gets stronger, the evil inclination goes ballistic, and what happens? Person can fall into a trap. Now, it's not necessarily their fault, right? I'll be generous over here. Let's say it's not necessarily their fault. It was something out of your control. But now it's in your control. So you say, but come on. It's only a question of how far I fall. Yeah. Mr. S going to have a field day. Going to have an absolute field day. But that's what life is. We have to work. We may fall. Right? But it's not to say, wow, you're just set up to failure. We're not set up to fail. You know why? Because there's an antidote, the Gemara says. There's an antidote to the evil inclination. You know what the antidote is? Torah. That's the antidote for a Jew or a non-Jew. But there's one caveat. The caveat the Gemara says is, even with Torah, that's not enough to fight the evil inclination. You know what you need with Torah? You need heavenly help. So we have to pray every day. Not only to overcome the evil inclination, that God should help us overcome the evil inclination. Because the reality is, man is weak. Man is fickle. And if we don't work on ourselves, we're silly putty. I don't know if silly putty still exists. We are silly putty in the hands of the evil inclination. Evil inclination, I think, has had it easier today than any other time in history. Right? Every time in history has its evil inclination. 1900s is all about the isms, socialism, communism, democracy. Right? Today it's all about desire. Richest generation in the history of man, it's all about desire. Right? So now a person wanted certain thrills or whatever, you got to go to certain places. Is that today? You have it right in the palm of your hand. Yeah, you don't have to be embarrassed right there. You can have everything. I can tell you, my travels, I see people, it's unbelievable. I see people walking around, they don't even look up. Their head is stuck in a phone. It's stuck in a phone. That's where it is. Might miss an email, might miss a text, might, whatever. And, the evil inclination today has it so easy. Because once a person's sucked in, very hard to get down. Very hard to get out. Not only that, a person seen images 20 years ago, 10 years ago, right? Those images hopefully are buried and gone, but they're not. They're part of your psyche. And if a person's down in different things, they're having, stress, whatever, these things can come up because the person can't handle so many things at once, right? They don't disappear, just the opposite. They can make a person get worse and do worse things. You're going to say, it's as much as you're in control. You're not. That's the whole point. It's these type of things you're not in control. Take someone who, grows up as a sports junkie, a news junkie, whatever, then tell them to quit cold turkey. Even if your team's not in it or whatever. Very hard. Tell someone who's a smoker. I can quit whenever I want. Yeah, you know how hard it is? It's because they put nicotine in. Nicotine is addictive. Very hard. It's part of your system, right? Until a person finds out like their whole systems are, are clogged and all that, maybe they have a heart attack, God forbid, finally wake up. It's a very hard thing. And people have all kinds of things, that we're addicted to. I like to say good things, but most of them are bad, and they have a negative effect. And a person can't say, I'm just going to change. I'm just going to change everything overnight. Doesn't happen. When it comes to Torah and mitzvahs, it's step by step. Step by step. Speaking to someone earlier, someone mentioned, about something, working on something. And I said, it takes time. But you see one thing, people get depressed. Say, I felt this way, I felt that way, felt a different way, different things, they feel bad about themselves. But I said, you got to think about where you are. Where are you right now? The person came out of paganism, they've been learning, they've been working on themselves, whatever, right? Ask yourself, where were you 2 years ago? Let's say better, where were you 5 years ago? 5 years ago, right? If most people are relatively new to this process, right? 5 years ago, you don't even want to say where you were. Why? Very simple, you'd be embarrassed. Now you have a whole different understanding. Okay, are we perfect? No, we're works in progress. We got to work hard. But when a person has a sensitivity to the way people speak, the way people dress, that's a huge thing. Because a while ago, you never would have thought that. You say, okay, that's the way people dress. That's the way people talk. But who says it's right? It's Lashon Hara, immodesty, like all these things. That's holding somewhere in the world. That's holding better 95% of the world. Most people don't care. They don't see anything wrong with it. It's the way people speak, it's the way people dress. Who cares? So you have a problem? No, Torah has a problem. Torah has a problem with this. But if someone's tapped in, and if someone's in full throttle, tremendous. Doesn't mean we do everything we should. Right? I always say, knowing what the right thing to do and doing it, two separate things. But you have to know what the right thing to do is. Well, when a person has a higher awareness, you should be whistling Dixie. You should be doing the moonwalk. I don't know how to do either. Right? But if someone, someone's so excited, look, this bothers me. That's a huge thing. It should bother you. Right? If we see somebody, if we see a Jew, if a Jew sees a Jew desecrate Shabbos, what should we do? We should scream. We should want to scream because that's desecration of God. Desecration of what God wants. I'm not going to scream at them, obviously, but that should be our reaction. Because look what it is. Look what it does. Look what it does to the person. Look what it does to the Jewish people. Potential pain it's going to cause the Jewish people. That's a higher awareness. Now, doesn't make me perfect by any stretch. What it does, though, is it makes me aware, right? It makes me aware, right? And when it makes me aware, that's a huge thing, because most people aren't aware. Someone told us you never blow out a candle. Yeah. Blowing out a candle is an issue, they say, because it's like you're blowing out a soul. I don't think that it becomes a soul, that it becomes a demon. That I never heard. I heard it's like blowing out a soul. Not necessarily killing someone, but whatever that means. So come Havdalah, when a Jew makes Havdalah Saturday night, how do they put out the candle? They put wine or grape juice on a plate, and they put the candle in the plate. They don't blow it out. But that I have to do research on if it's really considered creator demon or not. Someone here mentions, just want to look this up quickly. Exodus 23. See what it says over there. 23:13. Here we got in everything I've said, name of God, of others you shall not mention. Yeah, but when it comes to idolatry, right, it says don't mention other gods. We're not mentioning gods, these are angels. Right, these are the names of angels. They were careful mentioning angels also. But it's an absolute mitzvah to make fun of idolatry. Why? Because the other gods have no power. Right, so the halacha is I can talk about JC, make fun of him, say he's going to drop dead, he's in, excrement forever and all this, and I'm not worried about it. Why am I not worried about it? Because it's got no power. And we should make fun of it, right? It's like, I'll speak about Buddha as a short little fat guy. They won't call him that. How can you call him a short little fat guy? Because he's got no power. He can't do anything. He just sits there like a blob. No pun intended. So yeah, just call him a short little fat guy. Not a problem. Right? Why is it over there saying, they gotta be careful. Right? Speaking in the name of other gods, so to speak, giving them power, giving them credibility. That I would hear is a problem. But speaking about them in general, making fun of them, absolute mitzvah to do so. Someone here mentions, how can Adam suffer from loneliness and boredom in heaven? How can he suffer from loneliness? I can't answer that. Don't know. He was separated from his wife for 120 years. The Medrash says. Isn't heaven a place without suffering? Seems to be. Right? If you're gonna bask in God's glory and get all the merit for the mitzvahs that you've done, right? There is no suffering. I'm not sure what that means. That he suffers from boredom. I have to clarify that. Someone asks, a family with children want to convert. How old can the children be considered for conversion? 12 or 13 years old. If the family's going in the right direction, they're going to send them to Jewish school. So then if they're underage, the children will convert with the parents. If they're over age, i.e. 12 or 13, right? 12 or 13, depending on a boy or a girl, then they would have to convert on their own, right? They'll convert with the parents, but they're gonna have to learn as well. If they're underage, when they become of age, let's say child converts the age of 5, because it's good for them, the parents going in the right direction, all the good things. If the child converts the age of 12 or 13, when they become mature, the rabbinical court will ask them if they want to stay Jewish. Now, not every rabbinical court will do that. If the rabbinical court sees that they're going in the right path, whatever, they won't ask them that. Depends, obviously, on the rabbinical court. But some may ask them just to see, they want to keep it or not. Now, a person has to remember also, when it comes to children, if they don't want to go in the right path, so to speak, they don't want to convert, let's say, so it is kind of problematic. It is kind of problematic because then if they're not keeping Shabbos, not keeping kashrus, right, it's definitely more problematic, the rabbinical court will say, because, how can the parents keep Shabbos, whatever, and they're messing things up and kashrus-wise and other things. Until they're out of the house, it could be that the rabbinical court will convert them. But if they're going in the right path and they're underage, the rabbinical court will convert them. But if they're over age, they'll have to convert themselves. But usually, again, they'll convert with the family, and obviously, the rabbinical court will ask them questions and different things and see what knowledge they have. But, make clear anyone who's going to convert, if they're, a child, they have to live in a place where they can get proper schooling. You cannot educate your child and homeschool them. That a rabbinical court won't allow. They most likely will not allow. But if they're not going to go in the right path, then a person may not be able to convert. So I just want to point that out. Someone asked, well, a letter of recommendation, let's say one of the Chabad rabbis in India, Mumbai, they get a recommendation, that'll help, right? Someone obviously knows you, that'll help in other countries, right? Obviously, those rabbis in the other countries will call up this rabbi and verify and all that. But yeah, letter of recommendation is very good. That's certainly, very good. And when someone converts, just in general, you'll need a letter of recommendation. right? From, different people, different rabbis, etc., in order to convert. Someone here mentioned sleep paralysis, coma resulted from sorcery. Could be. Comas can happen from any number of things. Does not necessarily sorcery. But if you're telling me, someone's sleeping, they go into a coma, is the cause from that? I don't know. That's news to me, but I'm not certainly not an expert in that. Someone asked before, what is Yasha? Let's see. 2 Samuel 1:18. Let me see. I think that's a misquote here. 1 second. What did Joshua mention? 2 Samuel 1:18. Let me see. 2 Samuel 1:18. Sefer HaYosher. Yeah, Sefer HaYosher. Yeah, and where's the other source? 1 second. Joshua 10:13. Over the same thing. It's over in the book of Uprights. It's a book where one of the commentators says that God told Moshe, Exodus chapter 34, verse 10, they would act in unprecedented manner for the benefit of Israel. The book of the Upright, or the book of Yosher, is called the Torah. Just another name. It's called the book of, it's really, Yosher means upright. Upright here is a reference to Torah. It means the book of the Torah. That's what the reference is. Someone asks, how far does title that a Jew isn't allowed to derive benefit from kosher food? Right? There are 3 things when it comes to kosher food. Can't cook it, even if you don't eat it. Can't get benefit from it. You cannot eat it. Which means that if it's not kosher, can't give it to a dog. Can't use it as fertilizer. That's benefit to the ground, if it would be benefit. So you have to throw it away in a way where no one is going to get benefit from it. Nobody. You're certainly not allowed, right? You're not allowed to work or own non-kosher food. That is true. You can't do business with non-kosher food. You can't have stock in McDonald's. Can't work at McDonald's. Any of these things, right? Now, a person could say, well, McDonald's doesn't just sell burgers. Yeah, but that's a lot of things they sell. You can't do commerce, right? You can't make money. You can't get benefit from it, even though, interesting enough, that McDonald's is only rabbinic prohibition, right? Because the meat's not kosher, cheese isn't kosher. So the only Torah prohibition of milk and meat is if you had kosher meat and kosher cheese, which I think they have here in Israel, right? You have the Glatt Treif kosher, Glatt kosher Treif restaurant, only in Israel. The meat's kosher, cheese is kosher, cook it together, Torah prohibition. That's the Torah prohibition. Any other McDonald's in the world, meat's not kosher, cheese isn't kosher, then it's a rabbinic prohibition. Still forbidden, but the rabbinic prohibition. What about being a semi-truck driver delivers supplies to stores that include non-kosher food? I don't know if that's your responsibility. Or 1 second, or even a DoorDash or Uber driver that transports. That's a problem, right? Isn't that involved in creating or selling? That's a different issue, right? Let's say you work as an Uber driver. You work as an Uber driver, and someone ordered a pepperoni pizza. Pepperoni pizza. Right, you're ordered to drive it to this resident, right? And who is it? The Cohens. Now I can't go by the name. Could be the father's Jewish, not the kids. But let's say it's a Jewish family. Let's say it's a Jewish family. You got a problem. What's the problem? There's a Torah prohibition of putting a stumbling block in front of someone. Now, the question is, does that apply to a non-Jew or not? To a Jew, definitely applies. 100% to a Jew, it applies. Here's the question. Does it apply to a non-Jew? If it would apply to a non-Jew, it'd be forbidden. It'd be forbidden to do it. Because you'd be over Torah prohibition. Putting a stumbling block. You'll say they could get it from somewhere else. That's not your problem. That's totally not your problem. Let them get it somewhere else. That's totally not your problem. Let them get it somewhere else. Right? But, let's say, for instance, someone made a Nazirite vow, which you should never do, because you can't bring a sacrifice today, so they'd be stuck being a Nazirite forever. And that, person, Nazirite vow means can't eat grapes, any grape products, wine, can't go to a cemetery. I'm sure people will be bothered by that. Can't go to a cemetery, whatever. So this Nazirite comes to your house. So, you have a meal together and you bring out a bottle of wine. That's putting a stumbling block in front of him. That you can't do. Now, if he could get that wine anywhere else, fine. That's not your problem. So let him get it anywhere else. You don't have to worry about that. He'll do whatever he does. But you putting it in front of him, that's a problem. I mentioned once before, let's say you have a Jewish plumber, non-religious, comes to fix your plumbing, right? He says, I'm thirsty, you get me a drink of water. So you can get him a drink of water. Can you hand it to him? Why can't you hand it to him? You're not going to make a blessing. So if you do that, you're also going to make a stumbling block over here. Now, if you were to ask him, say, listen, I'll give it to you, but we make a blessing, he's probably going to hate you. Some people will say, yeah, I'll make a blessing. Right? Comes to Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, one of the Torah giants, the last generation, and he said, yeah, you can give it to him. You can even pass it to him hand to hand. Why? Because if you don't, he'll hate Judaism more. So what happens? You have a non-religious person, you have him for a meal. They're not interested in being religious or all that. Can you pass them food? Now, technically, you shouldn't. I do my best. I have, a certain family, whatever. I'll place it down in front of them. And they'll take it. They don't know the difference. In this case, they don't know the difference. Or sometimes if I can't without, okay. You can hand it to them. But it's not so simple. It's definitely not so simple because they're not making a blessing there. You're putting a stumbling block in front of them. That you're not allowed to do. Yeah. So yeah, in that case, giving to a Jew, and this stuff is straight, that's a problem. That's a total prohibition of putting a stumbling block in front of him. Someone asks, is it okay for a Jew or convert to go into business with family that's a non-Jew? Yeah, it's not a problem. Obviously, one issue would be, let's say you have a store or something, about being open on Shabbos. Right, that a Jew can't do. Especially, let's say his name is Schwartz. He's got an obvious Jewish name. If he's got an obvious Jewish name and say Schwartz's place, whatever, that's a problem. Because then people can say, oh, he's doing business on Shabbos. Right? But what if his name is Gonzalez? They don't know. He didn't change his name. It's Gonzalez, but now they know he converted. Right? So if he's in business with a non-Jewish relative and they want to keep it open on Shabbos, that's not good for you. There is a potential way out of it. And that is all the proceeds that are made on that day, you give it to them. In other words, you don't have any part of it. For you, it's closed. Whatever they make on that day, that goes to someone else. Or everybody's got a response about that someone become religious, but he couldn't, for whatever reason, he wasn't holding by keeping the store closed on Shabbos. So the question is, what should he do? He knows he can't get benefit from any of the money that he makes. I think you put up a sign, or he said the proceeds are going to X or whatever, but it's not going to me. Then you put up some sort of sign. I forget exactly what it was, what it said, but it wasn't. But he had to make an announcement, like a public announcement, saying, he wasn't getting benefit here because it's under his name. If it's clearly under his name, right, it looks even worse, right? It's got a Jewish sounding name. But this is someone not, holding where he needed to be holding. At least he was holding enough not to work not to work there, but the place was open. So these are good questions. These are, these are issues come up. These are definite issues that come up. Putting a stumbling block in front of someone is, if you go to TorahAnytime.com, Rabbi Yosef Wiener has a whole series on putting a stumbling block in front of someone. I mean, I'm just giving you just a drop, a drop of some of the issues. He goes into town, on a lot of these questions. There are a lot of common problems that this comes up on, and come up on a regular basis. And you could transgress a Torah prohibition, many Torah prohibitions, by doing so. And having, non-religious family, if you're Jewish, is there are issues. There are a lot of issues. I probably read a whole book on the issues I've gone through. Probably should, if I ever had time. A lot of things, certain things I had to rely on that in general you wouldn't rely on necessarily. That's why, thank God, I got one of the Torah giants of generation tell me what to do, what not to do, and different things. But there are a lot of complicated things that are not, they're not so cut and dry. And sometimes you may have to do things and rely on things that you just never should, but you might not have a choice. I always say a person's playing poker, right? You're playing poker and you get all single digit numbers, all single digit cards, right? You get all these single digit cards. Well, you got to fold, right? You're not going to win over here. You don't have a pair. You don't have anything, right? Some people, you get dealt a certain hand. And, there can be a lot of issues. There can be a ton of issues. I've run into a lot over the years. Thank God issues are much less now, in many ways. But a lot of different things. And, some things, just things happen. I couldn't get out. It was out of my control. Certain things happen, whatever. Certain things I wasn't too happy about. I had to rely, on certain things. I didn't necessarily want to, but, there are other issues. Shalom bayis, for the sake of your spouse or, family. Not every, let's make clear, not everything's permissible for family. Because it's family, people say family's everything. Family's blood. Yeah, so what? When they intermarry, not blood anymore, are they? Right? But, go to intermarriage. How do you get out of that? Can't. Jew marries a non-Jew. Can you go to the wedding? No. And a friend of mine went to a wedding. Sisters got married. I said, how could you go to the wedding? He said, well, everyone knew I was there under protest. So I was like doing the horror of dancing and eating your kosher food under protest. Yeah, they knew I was there under protest. You got a lot of pressure. Tremendous amount of pressure to go. They didn't go. I'm sorry, he went. You want to bring up the family, this, that. Now, how can you go? You represent Torah. How can you go? Forbidden. They're going to call you names. They're going to say you're breaking up the family. Because sticks and stones, let people talk. Painful. Might be painful. But you can't turn the Torah into a pretzel. That's what I always say. Can't turn it into a pretzel. When it's forbidden, it's forbidden. I had someone the other day, I had a story. Someone, father died, family's not religious. And at the funeral, one of the siblings wanted their son. It was really a stepson, really, but so it was like a step grandson to hold the casket, to walk out with the casket. He wasn't Jewish. Now, might have had a quasi conversion, but he wasn't Jewish. This person said no. He ain't not doing it. Totally not doing it. And they used to say they went ballistic. They're like, convert. He said, no, he's not, according to us, he's not Jewish. You're not doing it. And that was it. They're still talking. I think, and this person said straight out, unbelievable strength in such a situation. And this person said, if they never talk to me again, they've had a bad relationship. Between some of these siblings. But okay. And they said they never talk to me again because of this. Fine. Gone through enough in life. That's a hard test. That's a hard test. But you know what? That's what you have to do. As painful as it might be. That's what you have to do. Are you going to come out smelling like a rose? Oh, no. In God's eyes, he's beaming. Beaming. He says, look at that. Even under those circumstances, and you're about to bury your father, under those circumstances, you tell the other person basically to go to hell. It's never going to happen. I mean, try to tell them in a nice way, right? But in no uncertain terms, that's not going to happen because it's wrong, right? And she's the only one that's religious. So imagine, she's probably got a lot of flack. You can imagine. She doesn't care because it's one God who runs the world and he's the one in charge. So better look like a fool in this world and be yelled at and screamed at and this and that than be look like a fool in God's eyes. It's power. But what can you do? If you doubt that hand, that's what you got to do. And people scream at you and you're a fanatic and you're this and you're that and you have to go to the wedding. No, I don't. Oh, but there's that. Okay? You got to stand your ground and let the chips fall where they may. God's running the show, not you. And the Torah said you can't do it. You can't do it. Yeah, but you've changed in this. I've been accused of that also. I said, yeah, I'm reconnecting, back to 3,000 years. You're the ones that changed, not me. Oh, you're a fanatic. You're that. Fine. Let people talk and let them say what they want. All right? Is the Torah true or it's not? If it's true, you're wrong. Finished. That's your opinion. Fine. You want to argue with it? No. I love that. Come on, I got so much evidence. No. Okay. Well, you're not going to get me to do something that's wrong. You think it's wrong. Yeah, I got 3,000 years of history telling me it's wrong. Right? I mean, you got to be a gibor. You got to be strong. You got to be like the rock of Gibraltar. You don't let anything phase you. You got to do what God wants. And in this world doesn't mean you're going to be smelling like a rose. But that's real power. You're not doing it to show someone up. You're doing what's right and what God wants. Painful. Painful to say that to someone. But what are you going to do? That's what the Torah says. That's what the Torah wants from me. It wants me to be strong even under those circumstances. Right? Now, I don't think there's any question. Imagine the merit that the person gets. Because we say, Lefitzar Agra. According to the amount of pain is the amount of reward that you went through. It's power. It doesn't mean we don't have, strong trials here. And people are going to make fun and people are going to say things and this and that. You're right. Doesn't make us feel good. But you know what? In God's eyes, we're doing the right thing. Doing the right thing. I don't feel bad at anything. I don't have regrets or remorse things I've had to do because I had one of the Torah giants guiding me. Tell me what I could do, what I couldn't do, this, that. So a lot of people don't like him, okay? But he told me exactly what to do. That you can't do this. Can I rely on this? Yes, no, whatever he told me to do, that's what I did. And I can tell you, firsthand experience, did I come out smelling like a rose? Hell no. Hell no. It doesn't matter. That's what the Torah told me to do. That's what I did. Someone says, some of my non-Jewish friends are married to Jewish women. Oh, that's not their fault. It's a Jewish woman's fault. Is it bad if they feel offended or ashamed? It's bad for them. Let them feel bad. I mean, they don't have to feel bad. They haven't done anything wrong. It's their spouse that's done things wrong. Right? If they feel bad, it's their fault. What do you care? Let them feel bad. I think people felt bad for me for the last 30 years. Felt bad, you're a fanatic, this and that. They see a beautiful family, they're like, oh, you got lucky. Nothing to do with Judaism. That's why you got such a beautiful family, whatever. Not for me. I would never do such a thing, but, unbelievable. Yeah, they admit finally. They'll admit finally, but, would they wish I'd be quote unquote normal, more modern? 100%. Be more like them? 100%. Not going to happen. And they don't have to like it. They have to deal with it. We have to deal with them. They have to deal with us. Is there negative feelings that guilt directed to me related to the evil eye? No. Evil eye is something else. You're causing someone to be jealous. They're not jealous of you. You got a nice car or you built a nice house or something like that. Someone might be jealous because they don't have or they can't. That's an issue with the evil eye. Someone feeling, they feel guilty or whatever. I can tell you, I've gotten a lot of guilt. A lot of guilt. It had nothing to do with me. I mean, I shouldn't say it had to do with me, but in the end, I made decisions, weren't popular, but I did what I had to do. It took someone, 15 years to see somebody in a different light. It wasn't just, oh, you did this and you did that. Not true. Totally not true. Right? It took them 15 years of getting hammered. Well, you did this, you did that, blah, blah, blah. Got hammered, on a regular basis. So I said, finally, I just said, this has nothing to do with religion over here. Religion just complicates the issue. But there are other basic fundamental issues here. They have nothing to do with the religion. Like, really? Till certain things became a little bit clearer, then they got it. But that didn't help me. That's like 15 years after the fact, say, oh, I guess you were right. That's like a nice pat in the back, smack. You admit 15 years after hammering me, saying this and saying that, and say the third thing, and now you admit I'm right, okay? Yeah, these are hard pills to swallow. Everyone, gets exactly what God wants them to have. Let me see some other questions here. 1 second. I'll tell you like this, on this path, friends are going to go by the wayside. Listen, Noahides have it worse. I think they have it worse because Jews don't want to deal with them. Non-Jews don't want to deal with them. So sometimes family, friends, they just go by the wayside. They just think you're nuts. And, and then you realize you can't do the same things with them. You can't really hang out with them in different ways. So people split. That's essentially what happens. Does it have to happen that way? No. I know families that they all became religious. I know some that don't speak to each other because of it. A friend of mine, family cut him off when he was in his early 20s. Father never saw his wife or his kids. That's being really open-minded, right? So I would say that, if you get anything from family and it stays intact, you're lucky. You're lucky because I always tell people, I said, you want to see where family's holding, if they're really behind you or not, go to their house for, let's say, I don't know, let's say you go to someone's house, let's say the easiest time of the year, Thanksgiving. Go to Thanksgiving. Let's say it's not idolatry and all that. So you go for Thanksgiving. You bring your own food. You don't eat what they cook. See what happens. Once you start bringing your own food, you don't start eating, you're not eating the same things. We'll see how open-minded they are. That's the first thing to go. Once they see that, then you're not going to certain places. Okay, that might be another issue. When it comes to food, food's the total uniter over here. You don't eat their food, they're gone. They're gone. Say, come on, my food's just good enough. It was this, it was that. Now all of a sudden you don't eat. Find all kinds of excuses to say. All kinds of excuses. Right? And food's a big thing, though. Someone asks, there are Chavbites, I don't know who they are, that prohibited alcohol. And the Lord said their descendants forever still exist. I'm not sure what the reference is. We say that alcohol, you make kiddush, on, let's say, on wine. So you're allowed to drink. Question is, you're not allowed to be an alcoholic, right? You got to do things within reason. Right, but we don't. If you're talking about Nazarite, that's what you're talking about. If it's a Nazarite, right? So it's better never to make a vow than to make a vow and to keep it. But in any case, we don't go forbidding things to ourselves. A person wants to be more of an aesthetic or whatever, but we don't. Today we don't do that. We definitely don't do that. We don't forbid things to ourselves. We don't make vows. It's better, the Gemara says, to not make a vow than make a vow and keep it. What's the reason? Because we're afraid we're not going to make the vow. We're not going to keep it. We're not going to keep the vow. So certainly can't make a Nazarite vow anyway because we don't have any sacrifices today. But we don't go around forbidding things to ourselves. The men sleep with tzitzis and a kippah on. people sleep. They have let's say a keeper that stays on. Let's say tzitzis they don't. I think by Chabad they might sleep with tzitzis just to maybe guard them from spilling seed or whatever. But vast majority of any other ultra Orthodox group, modern or not, it doesn't sleep with tzitzis on. So it could be by Chabad, but I don't think by anybody else. Any other questions? Boy, guys, a little bit feisty today. Yeah. Any other questions? Good. I'm going to stop there. I just every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Coffman or Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. Send me an email, rabbichaimcoffman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN@gmail.com. Wish everyone a good beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of the day, depending where you are. And everyone have a great